Some birthdays in the room. I just had a birthday recently, and fuck. Now I'm at the age where I'm keeping my Molly in my pill organizer. Recently turned 54 years old. Oh, thank you. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks. Some people think I got some good skin for 54. I'll share with you guys a skin tip. I've been doing this for years. Every morning, very first thing I do the minute I get out of bed is I don't have kids. Very first thing. You gotta do it every day. It's a regimen. Actually, when you get to be 54, you start traveling with some pretty embarrassing stuff. I got caught at the airport recently because the TSA agent found my apricot facial scrub. Yes, it was St. Ives, the patron saint of pimples. And let me tell you something, as a man, the only thing more emasculating than traveling with apricot facial scrub is having another man take it away from you. I was like, come on, what do you think I'm gonna do? Exfoliate the plane to death? Let me have my scrub. And it's like, you can't take it. I'm like, it's expensive. He's like, sir, you're acting like a child. How old are you? I'm like, oh, I'm 54. He's like, you don't look 54. I'm like, because I use the scrub. I come from a time when you could hit your kids. Actually, I come from a time when you could hit other people's kids. It was open season on children in the 1970s. My dad used to hit me with a belt. And later on in his life, he was on his deathbed, and I flew down to Florida to say goodbye to him, and he apologized. I forgave him. I wound up thanking him. And he thanked me, and we had this really tender moment of closure. And then he lived. Yeah, he made a complete recovery. You ever leave your office with a coworker and you say goodbye to each other? And then you realize you're both walking the same way in the parking lot? And you got nothing to say to each other anymore? That became me and my dad every day of our lives. Different time when I was growing up, I'm not proud to admit this, different time, okay? When I was around 14, I was starting to date. My parents said, Jeff, now that you're dating, we expect you to bring home somebody like the family. And I was like, you mean emotionally distant? What do you mean like the family? And they said, no, we just wouldn't expect you to bring home a black girl. And you know, I lived at home, I did what they said, I never brought home a black girl. But I brought home a lot of black guys, and and you know what? After that, my parents would have been thrilled if I brought home a black girl. Somehow my dick sucking made them more progressive when it comes to race. You know how they say, black don't crack? Because black people have this wonderful attribute of being able to retain their youthful looks. Some people think I'm younger than 54. They're like, do you have any black in you? I'm like, I've had. I've earned these rosy cheeks, okay? All right? Up here, these cheeks, be cool. Okay. I'm originally from New York. I've lived in the South for 5 years. I've come into some homophobia here in the South. I've met some folks who don't think that gay people should be allowed to have kids or adopt. I think this is really interesting. There was a study done in New York City. And it turned out it didn't matter if the parents were 2 men or 2 women or a man and a woman. As long as the child was raised by a loving Jamaican nanny, everything was fine. So yeah, I've been living in the South for about 5 years. I've been living in Chattanooga. Anybody been to Chattanooga, Tennessee? Over there? All right, cool. One of my favorite things about Chattanooga is that you can walk around the city and you can kind of pretend like you live in a simulation because of the buildings around town. There's a building downtown with a dome on it. It's called the Dome Building. And right now where I live, there's a girls' preparatory school. It's called Girls' Preparatory School. But recently I had to go to the City Courts building. It's called City Courts Building! It's like Chattanooga is still rendering, you know? I don't know, I think everyone in Chattanooga was probably pretty smart. They were probably like, you know what, let's not name shit till we see how history plays out. No one's going to come to town and tear down public library. It's going to be all right. It's more religious than I thought it would be in Chattanooga before I moved there. Near where I live, there's a coffee shop, and outside it says, a whole lot of coffee, a little bit of Jesus. How did Jesus get wrapped up with coffee? I've read the Bible. He was never caffeinated the whole time. Coffee's not even his beverage. Like, it would make more sense if it were a wine shop, right? That was formerly a water shop. That would make more sense. Pretty religious in Chattanooga. Like, it doesn't matter how hot or cold it is. Right outside where I live, there are these folks who give out free Bible classes and free Bibles. And that's hard for me to see out on the street because I'm a Jew. But they're free. That's a tough one. That's a tough one. That's a tough one. Basically, I'm so Jewish I became Christian last weekend. That's what I'm getting at. People ask me if it's hard being a Jew in the South. You know, not as hard as it was in Egypt, but still pretty tough. I've met a whole lot of people who know nothing about Jewish culture in Chattanooga. Like, I've met folks who don't know what matzah is. Do we know what matzah is in this room? Some do, some don't, some look confused. Matzah is a terrible, tasteless cracker that Jews eat during Passover to remind us that when the Jews were cast out of Egypt, we had to flee so fast, we couldn't even wait for the bread to rise. Come on. I'm sure there are plenty of other baked goods that weren't done yet. Why can't we be celebrating with cookie dough? Why can't we have nice things? I went to a Portuguese restaurant in Chattanooga. No, I went to the Portuguese restaurant in Chattanooga. It's called the Portuguese restaurant of Chattanooga. And they had something called Portuguese creme brulee. Who likes creme brulee in this room? Let me hear it. Right? My favorite part of creme brulee is the tap-tap on the top. This creme brulee? No tap-tap. I know. They threw sugar on top of custard, and they said it was Portuguese creme brulee, and I was like, oh. But then I did some research, and it turns out in the 1400s, the Jews were cast out of Portugal. And maybe they had to flee so fast they couldn't wait for the creme brulee to set.